Iran's Revolutionary Guard claims its 11th round of missile attacks against Israel marks the beginning of the end for Israel's air defenses. In Palestine, Zionist forces killed at least 11 aid seekers near a distribution center run by the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in central Gaza. The plenary of the Colombian Senate approved the 77 articles related to the labor reform proposed by President Gustavo Petro. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Iran and Israel are in the sixth day of heavy confrontations following an intense attack on Tel Aviv, which exposed the vulnerabilities of its Iron Dome anti-aircraft system. Meanwhile, Israel attacked several locations in Tehran, including a university. Early Wednesday morning, commanders of the Zionist forces confirmed an attack on Tehran, the capital of Iran. Iranian media outlets reported an attack on Imam Hossein University, but did not provide further details. They described the attack on the university as an operation against centrifuge of the Revolutionary Guard Corps. According to Israeli media outlets citing military sources, attacks occurred in the northeastern and eastern parts of Tehran, including Tehran Pars and Hakimiyya. Hours later, the governor of Famine reported that enemy troops had shot down an F-35 fighter jet, and amid these tensions, Washington continues to fuel them through the president's social media post. On Wednesday, the Iranian presidential cabinet held its regular meeting in Tehran, where President Masoud Pezeshkian reaffirmed that unity and social cohesion will be vital to continuing on the path to success against Israel. While the Zionist defense minister affirmed that the Persian nation's command has been eliminated, the entire executive is meeting to conduct analysis and evaluation as the first week of direct confrontations with Tel Aviv comes to a close. Following a brutal attack by the Zionist entity targeting the Iranian nuclear industry, simultaneously, the chairman of the Iranian Parliament's National Security Committee, Ebrahim Assisi, assured that his forces will deprive Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of his sense of security throughout the world. And Iran's Revolutionary Guard claimed on Wednesday its 11th round of missile attacks against Israel marks the beginning of the end for Israel's air defenses.
We extend our congratulations to the devoted commanders and fighters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force over the 11th wave of the proud Operation True Promise 3, carried out using first-generation Fatah missiles. That marks the beginning of the end for the so-called legendary air defenses of the Zionist army and the confusion and self-harm among the Zionist thugs.
In this context, U.S. intelligence has contradicted the Israeli Zionist regime's statements on Iran as an immediate nuclear threat. U.S. intelligence concluded in its assessment that Iran is not actively pursuing the development of a nuclear weapon, and that the procedure for this could take about 3 years. In this regard, one of the sources pointed out that, according to reports, Israel may have delayed the Iranian nuclear program for some months, and that although significant damage has been caused to the Natanz facility, the Fordo plant and another uranium enrichment center remains intact. Despite these reports, U.S. President Donald Trump recently dismissed his own intelligence reports as false and persisted in his campaign of disinformation about the Iranian atomic program. Also in this context, precisely, U.S. media claim that Trump is evaluating military intervention in the Israeli-Iran conflict. According to this media, during a high-level meeting at the White House, Trump was informed about possible scenarios of intervention in the current conflict. In this sense, and according to available information, Trump has not made a final decision. The military option is on the table, which has sparked global concern about a possible escalation. And Iran's ambassador in Geneva, Ali Bahraini, rejected recent comments by U.S. President Donald Trump as hostile and unwarranted after the head of state called for Iran to surrender following Israel's aggression.
Remarks made by Donald Trump are completely unwarranted, are very hostile. We cannot ignore them. We are vigilant about what Donald Trump is saying. We will put it in our calculations, in our assessments, and there is a line which, if crossed, there should be a response on our side. And that line will be defined by our relevant authorities, including military forces. And once the red line is crossed, the response will come.
In Iran, citizens rallied near Palestine Square in Tehran in rejection of the attacks by the Israeli Zionist regime against the country. During the rally, citizens also rejected the position of U.S. President Donald Trump, who has been in charge of financing arms to the Zionist entity, not only against Iran but also against Palestine and Lebanon. Despite the declarations of the U.S. President, where he has asserted that he does not intend to involve his country in the conflict, Trump has also expressed that he hopes that the nuclear program will be eliminated. It is important to highlight that Iran responded to the Israeli attacks, making use of its right to legitimate self-defense established in the United Nations Charter. And the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, on Tuesday night affirmed its categorical rejection of U.S. threats of direct military intervention against Iran. Through a statement, the movement stressed that any direct U.S. involvement in a military aggression against Iran would have dangerous repercussions, holding Washington and Israel fully responsible for the escalation of tensions in the region. At the same time, it urged Arab and Islamic countries to adopt a unified and responsible stance to confront Zionist arrogance and reject the aggression against Iran. Hamas' statement comes in response to conflicting reports about the possibility of Washington's direct involvement in strikes against Iran after U.S. President Donald Trump concluded a meeting with the U.S. National Security Council that lasted more than an hour. In other context, Canada hosted the recent G7 summit, which concluded without a joint statement on Ukraine due to the United States' refusal. The sudden withdrawal of President Donald Trump, who claimed he needed to monitor the situation in the Middle East, interrupted the agenda of the meeting and highlighted the deep internal differences. The remaining 6 leaders addressed the current conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, as well as Israel and Iran, but failed to reach significant agreements on other issues. In addition, they agreed to jointly attempt to combat what they call non-commercial policies that could endanger global access to critical minerals. We now have our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English. You'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 11 aid seekers were killed and dozens more injured on Wednesday morning by Israeli forces near an aid distribution site run by the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in central Gaza. The attack came just one day after Israeli forces carried out a massacre against aid seekers in Han Yunis, southern Gaza, marking one of Gaza's deadliest days at the aid distribution sites. According to local and medical sources, at least 11 people were brought to Al-Awda hospital in central Gaza after being targeted by Israeli gunfire and shelling near the aid distribution site close to the Netzarim corridor. More than 70 others were also injured. Israel has repeatedly targeted starving aid seekers, especially those gathered at food distribution sites run by the GHF, killing more than 397 people and injuring over 3,000 since the U.S. and Israeli-backed foundation began operations on May 26. And during the resumption of the 10th emergency session of the United Nations on Palestine, Nicaragua reaffirmed its condemnation of Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. Jaime Hermida, Nicaragua's representative, called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire as well as access to humanitarian aid. He stressed that there will be no peace in the Middle East as long as the occupation of Palestinian territories and the theft of their land are systematic. Hermida vindicated the Palestinian people's resistance as it represents the struggle of peoples worldwide. He reaffirmed that Nicaragua will continue to defend justice, peace, and respect for international law. And metal workers' strike protests in southern Spain remain unabated. In the last hours, road closures and interruptions of some vital services have been reported. Demonstrations that are taking place in the province of Cádiz started with a lot of tension early in the morning. Barricades have been erected, several roads have also been cut, and the railway traffic has been interrupted. The unions calling these protests, the General Union of Workers and the Workers' Commissions, assure that about 30,000 workers are called to support the strikes in the metal sector. They are demanding wage updates based on the new consumer price index and improvements in working conditions, especially in relation to the toxicity bonus and stable employment. They warn that if an agreement is not reached, the strike could be indefinite. And on June 11, 2025, Spain, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and Gibraltar reached a historic agreement that redefines relations post-Brexit, ending the border fence. More details in the following report.
La frontera de Gibraltar podría desaparecer en 2026.
The Gibraltar border could disappear in 2026. This is the historic agreement reached between Spain and the United Kingdom. Milagros crosses this fence almost daily to do her shopping in Spain. She is Spanish, married to a Gibraltarian, and trusts that the end of the border will promote greater integration between both sides.
Lo que es el pueblo se lleva bien.
The people get along well. We go there tomorrow. We have no problem. Regarding the line, Gibraltar doesn't have a problem. Many people work here. Almost all the workers in Gibraltar are Spanish. For them, it's also better. The kids who come to work and after working have to endure a queue. For them, agreements are better, allowing them to enter and leave with more freedom.
Cada día, más de 10.000 personas cruzan esta frontera para trabajar.
Every day, more than 10,000 people cross this border to work. The majority are Spaniards who, for decades, have been involuntary protagonists of the political tensions between London and Madrid over the sovereignty of the Rock. This is a very important step above all for relations and for any worker who works in Gibraltar. And for anyone who will no longer face restrictions and problems. However, we have suffered a lot at this border, which has been highly politicized. After years of negotiations stemming from Brexit, the agreement puts an end to physical checks at the border fence. Border control will be moved to the port and airport of Gibraltar, jointly managed by Spanish and Gibraltarian agents. This will allow the integration of the Rock into the Schengen area.
Our shared and overarching objective has been to secure the region's long-term prosperity, particularly by removing all physical barriers, checks and controls on people and goods crossing between Spain and Gibraltar, while preserving the integrity of the Schengen area, the EU single market and the customs union.
La línea de Gibraltar han vivido siempre.
These two regions have always lived united yet separated by this fence, one of the last physical borders remaining on the Iberian Peninsula.
Los pueblos de la línea de Gibraltar ven cada vez.
The towns on Gibraltar are increasingly close to the end of the fence that has separated them for a century, and now this historic agreement will allow them to put an end to years of border division.
Sergio Rodrigo y Lucía Muñoz, teleSUR, Andalucía, España.
And Kenyan police shot an apparent bystander at close range Tuesday during the latest protest over the killing of a blogger in custody earlier this month. According to reports, the victim, who was a street vendor, was involved in a confrontation with two officers on a sidewalk. The man was being treated at Kenya's largest referral government hospital, along with 10 others injured in the demonstration. The police, for their part, expressed their concern about this incident and announced the arrest of the officer involved. Hundreds of protesters clashed with police in the capital while demanding the arrest of Deputy Inspector General of Police Eliud Langat, who had filed a defamation complaint against the blogger Albert Ugwan. Ugwan was arrested on June 6 and died in custody. We have a second short break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final break, don't go away. Welcome back. The plenary of the Colombian Senate approved the 77 articles related to the labor reform proposed by President Gustavo Petro in support of the country's labor force. During Tuesday's meeting, the last 12 remaining articles were discussed and voted on. The worker sector detailed that among the key points are the request for the payment of 100% of Sundays and holidays. In addition, an important aspect approved is the apprenticeship contract for students of the National Apprenticeship Service, where they will have a labor contract with provision of services. In view of this, the text remains open to modifications while waiting for the conciliation in the Chamber and in the Senate. And the Justice of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace in Colombia, Ana Caterina Haig, requested the prosecutor's office the criminal investigation of 3 alleged suspects involved in the forced disappearance and murder of political leaders of the Arhuaco people. Justice has sought to clarify the likely participation of Luis Alberto Restrepo Gutierrez, Alfonso Macias, Jose Matos, Carlos Matos, and Wilson Ramirez in these cases, concerning the investigation and the findings in the Betania farm, located in Cesar. The authorities stress the need for precautionary measures to access the property. In this context, recently, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace compared copies to determine the presumed participation of civilians in the crimes associated with the ethnic case, which involved the forced disappearance, torture, and assassination of political leaders. And in Bolivia, government spokesperson rejected a report from FAO and the United Nations World Food Programme about the alleged imminent risk of famine affecting 19% of the country's population. Correspondent Freddy Morales with the details.
Un informe de la Organización de Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura.
A report from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the World Food Programme forecasting imminent famine in Bolivia caused discomfort within the government.
Como gobierno nacional rechazamos enfáticamente.
We, as the national government, emphatically reject the assertions made in the report and the opinions expressed based on it. First, efforts have been made to generate uncertainty and anxiety based on the assertion that Bolivia is at risk of famine, which is completely false. Why? Because the published report on critical points regarding hunger does not show Bolivia at risk of famine.
Según el gobierno boliviano, el informe de la FAO.
According to the Bolivian government, the Food and Agriculture Organization report is found with errors, such as mentioning that due to the shortage of dollars, the country will not be able to import basic foods such as tomatoes, onions, carrots, and potatoes. We do not import any type of products from the family basket that has to do with primary production, so this data is totally erroneous, and we strongly reject that we are going to have deficiencies in the capacity to import. We must inform the Food and Agriculture Organization that we do not import products from the basic basket, therefore. It is an erroneous data planned in a negative way to harm government management.
Para rebatir el informe internacional se mencionó que aquí.
To counter the international report, it was mentioned that the contribution of family farming is important here. In addition to the fact that this year food production grew by an average of almost 30% compared to last year, and 12 state programs supporting food production and irrigation are currently in place. We want to tell the Food and Agriculture Organization that we are producers by vocation, and we will never die of hunger. The data show clearly so that we can expose to the Bolivian people, and there will be no doubt that the government is working in the productive sector.
Al final del día, los funcionarios de las propias Naciones Unidas en Bolivia.
At the end of the day, United Nations officials in Bolivia visited the Foreign Ministry to clarify that the report on the imminent risk of famine included 13 countries, not including Bolivia.
Que no se encuentra Bolivia.
El informe no menciona ni alerta sobre.
The report does not mention or warn about a famine situation in Bolivia.
Cabe indicar que hambruna es un término técnico con criterios específicos.
It should be noted that famine is a technical term with specific criteria such as the proportion of the population with extreme hunger, child wasting, and mortality rates, criteria that do not apply in the Bolivian case.
criterios que no aplican en el caso boliviano.
Según los datos oficiales, la producción de alimentos ha remontado este año.
According to official data, food production has risen this year despite problems such as road blockades and others, to the point that producers themselves are requesting authorization to increase their exports of soy, beef, milk, organ meats, chia, and sorghum. It is claimed that there is sufficient production, but it has been admitted that the constant rise in prices is reducing consumption by part of the population.
Reduce el consumo de parte de la población. Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
In our news, the brutal repression exercised by the government of the President of Panama, José Raúl Mulino, against unions, trade union students, social movements, and indigenous peoples has left the first fatality in Bocas del Toro in the northwest of the country. Although the Vice Minister of Public Security, Luis Felipe Casa, assured that the citizen was found dead on the road, demonstrators of the community denied it and showed the moment in which they were transporting him still alive. The office recognized this Tuesday that 1,900 military and police confirmed the Omega operation that represses hundreds of demonstrators that opposed Law 462, the loss of sovereignty and the deterioration of the environment. By air, land, and sea, demonstrators are besieged, many of them belonging to indigenous peoples and protected by international treaties. Vice Minister also assured that the victim from Abrego would have received attention from his paramedics, but the demonstrators denied it. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.